In today's video, we're going to cover atomic structure, which is absolutely essential to chemistry. The properties of all the different elements and the ions of those elements are due to the structure of the atom of those elements. So we'll cover the basics of atomic structure in this video. So I'm going to use the lithium atom as the example here. So lithium, abbreviated Li. If you look at the periodic table, lithium is right there on the table, atomic number of 3. And I'll talk in a minute about what atomic number means. First off, for lithium here, I'm going to draw in 2 circles and then put in a third circle next to those 2. And the green circle here represents the proton. So protons are one of the subatomic particles, and they have a positive charge. Just think of a proton as having a positive 1 charge. Next to those protons are going to be 3 red circles. And these red circles are neutrons. Neutrons have no charge to them. So neutral charge, that's the way to remember it. Neutron, neutral charge. Neutrons and protons both have equal mass to each other. So they're basically the same size. Just a proton's a positive charge, a neutron has no charge. Now there's one other subatomic particle that makes up the basic atomic structure of atoms, and that is the electron. I'm going to represent the electron here with a light blue circle, and the electrons have a -1 charge. So lithium, atomic number 3, has 3 protons. It also means it has 3 electrons. Now the protons and the neutrons, they are found in what's called the nucleus of the atom. They're in the middle of the atom, the nucleus. The electrons are not in the middle. The electrons are found outside of the middle of the atom in what's known as the electron cloud. I think dashed lines may be a better way to represent it. So I'll explain in a second here while I'm drawing 2 rings. So I'm going to put one of the electrons here, one of the electrons here, and then I'll put 1 electron out here in the second ring. So the electrons, they are what are involved in chemical bonding, which is the topic of the next video. So make sure to check that out if you want more information on chemical bonding. The electrons are found orbiting the nucleus of the atom in what's called the electron cloud. Now this first inner ring can only hold up to 2 electrons. So I put 2 in there, and then we start the second ring, and after that the second ring is able to hold 8 electrons. So then I draw the second electron outside of there. So there's the picture of the atom. We got protons, neutrons, and electrons. Now I mentioned when we looked at the periodic table that lithium has atomic number 3. So atomic number, I'll abbreviate number, atomic number is equal to the number of protons. The atomic number defines the atom because the number of protons defines the atom. If you change the number of protons, you change what atom you're looking at, what element you're looking at. If I lose a proton, right, I'm helium now, because helium is atomic number 2. So changing the number of protons changes what element you have. Now there's also something called the mass number. And the mass number is equal to the number of protons plus the number of neutrons. In a minute, we'll look at one of the primary reasons we define mass number, because the same element can have different mass numbers. We'll talk about that in a sec. But the last thing on this page I want to mention is that in elemental form, so like it shows on the periodic table, the number of protons you have equals the number of electrons, because these elements are all uncharged. Since they don't have a charge, but protons and electrons are each charged, the number of protons has to match the number of electrons. Isotopes. So down here, mass number is the number of protons plus the number of neutrons. If you change the number of protons, you change the element. But that's not the case for neutrons. And here's an example. There are 3 isotopes of carbon that are found naturally. What isotopes mean is the same number of protons, but a different number of neutrons. So there's 3 isotopes. We have carbon 12. 12 is the mass number. Carbon 13 and carbon 14. Carbon 12 has 6 protons. Carbon 13 has 6 protons. And carbon 14 has 6 protons. They all have 6 because they're all carbon. Carbon is defined as the element with 6 protons. Likewise, they also have 6 electrons. And that's the abbreviation for electrons. I'll remove the plus sign just so you don't get confused that we're adding these up. You also have 6 electrons here, and you have 6 electrons here. Again, the carbon's neutral. It has no charge. So if you have 6 protons with a positive 1 charge, you need 6 electrons with a negative 1 charge to balance that out. Now the final number is your number of neutrons. So remember, mass number is equal to the number of protons plus the number of neutrons. So mass number of 12, 6 protons, that means we have 6 neutrons. Here, mass number 13. 13 minus 6 protons gives you 7 neutrons. And 14 here. Right, mass number of 14 is equal to the number of protons 6 plus the number of neutrons, which will represent as n. So then n is equal to 14 minus 6. That gives us 8 neutrons. So those are isotopes. Same number of protons, different number of neutrons. We'll look at a video later on of what the importance of isotopes are. One example with the carbons here is that carbon 14 is radioactive, and that's what's used to carbon date things, to see how old something is, such as a mummy in Egypt or a fossil that you find, right? Those can be done through carbon dating. So check out the next video, which will look at chemical bonds.